Every self-respecting man should defend his honor and not become a rag. I believe that you need to fight for your honor and dignity. My wife's infidelity left a deep mark on me. I had a thirst for revenge, which became stronger and stronger every day. I wanted justice to prevail, but on the other hand, I did not want to let emotions take over me. But I failed. My name's Dave, and I'd like to share a little tale explaining why I'm sitting in my kitchen at 2:30 p.m. on a weekday, a time when I'd typically be at work. You see, I feel compelled to account for the 4 phone calls and single text I've made during the 2 hours I've been here so far. About 1 hour and 45 minutes spent contemplating and 15 minutes taking action that could potentially disrupt numerous lives. You see, excuse me, there's someone at the door. Oh, hello, sweetie, where's Fiona? I called Stuart, and he came home early. He'll pick her up from kindergarten and take care of her until I return. Linda, I've mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. He's a fantastic guy. I know it's customary for a father to be wary of his son-in-law, but you chose so wisely that I can't help but like him. My daughter gave a faint smile at my comment. We shared a similar sense of humor. Have you informed Pete yet, Dad? No, your brother is currently away at sea. I'll email him later. All right, Dad. I'm here for you. You know that. Yeah, thanks, sweetie. We fell silent for a while. Why would she do this to you, Dad? I don't know, darling. But why? Didn't she say anything? I haven't actually spoken to her yet. So she's still... Yup. I observed as my daughter's troubled gaze shifted towards the staircase leading to the main bedroom. I simply wanted to wait so she could explain to all of us why she did it at the same time. All of us? Yes, I've invited a few more guests. They should arrive shortly. What's your plan? Only what's necessary for me to survive this. So you already have a plan? Yep. But doesn't it depend on her motive? Why? The facts speak for themselves. The motive is irrelevant. But she might have been coerced. Trust me, if you witnessed what I did and heard what I heard, you'd know she wasn't being coerced. Linda locked eyes with me for a moment. I thought you were handling this well, but now I see you're not, are you? No. I turned away, shielding my daughter from witnessing her father's tears. What should I do? She asked. Follow your conscience. My opinion of you won't change regardless of your decision, I replied. Thanks, Dad. Any idea why Mom would do this? She inquired. I have no clue, sweetheart. I believed our marriage was solid until this morning, I admitted. What happened this morning? She pressed. Well, your mother has never been good at hiding things. After 27 years together, I know her routines well. She showers every morning, washes her hair on Tuesdays and Fridays, and spends a consistent amount of time getting ready. But this morning, she was in the bathroom for much longer than usual. When I checked in on her, I noticed she wasn't wearing her usual work clothes. When I asked about her plans, she lied, saying it was just a regular day. But her demeanor was unusually calm. That's when I knew something was off, I explained. What did you do then? She asked. I turned away, he said. I called in sick to work and parked nearby. I planned to follow her when she left, but she didn't go anywhere. I stayed put until the guy she works with at the real estate office showed up around 11:30. I sneaked in, confirmed my suspicions, and then contemplated my next move. After that, I made a few phone calls, and here we are. Did you notice any signs before today, Dad? I mean, anything suspicious? I always thought you two were solid. No, honey, nothing at all. As far as I knew, we were in love, planning to work a few more years, then retire happily together. Dad, I have to ask, did you ever... Don't even go there, Linda. No, I have never betrayed your mother. I have never disrespected a woman like that in my life. Even when our intimate life dwindled a couple of years ago, I just dealt with it. What? You two haven't been intimate in 2 years? That's right, your mother wasn't very sexually expressive. She claimed she didn't enjoy it much. Sure, it seemed like she did at the beginning, but getting started became the issue. When she hit menopause 2 years ago, whatever spark I used to see just disappeared. So finding her today, it must have been tough. I turned my gaze away, allowing its steely intensity to convey my feelings. At that moment, there came another gentle knock on the door. I opened it to find my father-in-law waiting outside. "Come in, Paul." "Thanks, Dave. Where is she?" "She's upstairs in our bedroom." "All right. I need to see it for myself." "I understand. Feel free to go ahead, sir. Just please try not to disturb her." The elderly man ascended the stairs and returned a minute later, visibly aged more than just a minute. He slumped into a chair. I poured him a whiskey, which he drank in one go. "I can't believe she would betray you like this. She saw how shattered you were when your previous fiancé cheated on you. She helped you through it all. And not only that, she knows the pain I went through when her mother left with that despicable person, abandoning me and the children. I'm sorry. I have to leave." I suppose a woman shouldn't witness her grandfather's tears either. I escorted him to the door. Linda seemed as if she wanted to join us, but I gestured for her to stay back. I wanted the elderly gentleman to preserve whatever dignity remained for him. He stood on the porch, holding onto my shoulders for stability. "Do what needs to be done, son. But no physical altercations, all right? I couldn't bear to witness that." "Don't worry, Dad. I won't hurt your daughter, but as for the rest, I'm sorry about what I'm going to do. A man should do what a man should do." He stared at me for a while, then nodded. He trudged back to his car and drove off slowly. A broken man. I called his son, my wife's brother, and without going into details, convinced him to visit his father for support. I was just hanging up when I heard the toilet flush. "Look at Linda. Does that seem like a form of coercion to you?" "No, Dad. How can you bear to stay here? Why not go up and confront the jerk?" "Well, it's not simple, darling. I have this ability to detach myself from emotions. I can sort of disconnect from all the feelings, you know." "Oh, so that's where I inherited it from? Then why put yourself through this? Why not go upstairs and intervene? Throw the woman out?" "Well, there's one more person expected." Right on cue, there was another knock on the door. I opened it to find a reasonably well-presented woman a few years younger than me. Surprisingly, she had a teenage boy and girl with her, appearing to be in their mid to late teens. "Mr. Brown, is it?" "Yes, please call me Dave. I'm Jenny Smith, and these are my kids, Robert and Sarah. I picked them up from school. If what you say is true, I wanted them here, if for no other reason than to understand that it was their father who tore our family apart." I greeted Robert with a firm handshake, surprising me with its strength. Then I introduced everyone to Linda. "You mentioned having evidence, Dave." In response, I walked over to the pants resting on the couch arm and retrieved a wallet. Passing it to Jenny, she opened it and examined the driver's license, a tear escaping her eye. It seemed she had clung to a hope that my phone call was mistaken. Her expression turned steely. "So, Dave, where are they?" Instead of answering, I gestured for silence by pressing a finger to my lips. We sat quietly, listening to the murmurs and shuffles. "Damn it. You haven't confronted them yet?" "No, I thought it best if we tackled this together. I captured some footage and set up a voice recorder under the bed. We can act now if you're ready. Perhaps the kids should wait until things settle." "Agreed. Just a moment, though. I've got a locksmith ready to change my locks. Wanted to be sure before giving the green light. Not the first time, honestly. He's a smooth-talking little jerk." Linda and I waited as she called the locksmith and her lawyer, authorizing them both. To distract the children from the sounds, we engaged in meaningless chatter. Jenny squared her shoulders. "All right, let's get this done." Jenny, Linda, and I went up the stairs while the children stayed downstairs waiting for our signal. After Jenny cautiously peeked out of the doorway, I motioned for the others to stay hidden and entered the room. Standing at the foot of the bed, I watched in disgust. What I will never forget is the scene of my wife's infidelity. I was passively watching. When she rolled over onto her back, our eyes met, and her expression changed to shock, followed by a scream. Her lover, noticing her reaction, also looked in my direction. He started to get up. They looked ridiculous. However, when he stood up, he stopped, meeting my gaze with a growing sense of fear for his physical safety in the near future. "That's right, you're a piece of shit. I may be bigger, uglier, and believe me, much angrier than you. Why don't you just crawl back into bed and cover yourself in my ex-wife? He was unquestionably compliant in bed, among other things. In no time, they were lying next to each other beneath the covers. I observed the transition in Tracy's expression from shock to defiance. I allowed her to speak first. Dave, I want a divorce. I've fallen in love with Joe, the guy here. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. We were going to tell you tomorrow. It's all right, my dear wife. I had a feeling I'd eventually learn his name was John Smith, right? Their expressions revealed their shock. Not the wisest decision to leave your wallet in your pants pocket downstairs, idiot. Tracy, just out of curiosity, why did you choose to end our marriage like this? You must have known that catching you cheating would shatter me. Finally, I detected some shame on her face. I'm sorry, David. We couldn't help falling in love. I understand, dear. But you could have refrained from putting the cart before the horse. You could have refrained from sleeping with this jerk before announcing you wanted a divorce, couldn't you? I'm sorry, David. I just wanted to ensure that John and I were compatible, you know. We didn't want you to catch us. And if it helps, this was the first time. What? Test driving the new model, so to speak? Trying him on for size? Don't be vulgar, David. I don't want our marriage to end in a fight. Can't we just part as friends? It nearly breached my mental defenses. I presume that in the intensity of the moment, she recited a pre-prepared speech for tomorrow. You've got to be kidding me. You're lying in my bed with another man, and you want to end things as friends. Not happening. We locked eyes until Tracy glanced away. I decided it was time to quantify the hurt. Your father wanted me to convey how disappointed he is in you. He had hoped you wouldn't turn out like your mother. You didn't really do that? Tracy's face paled. I did. I'm surprised you didn't see him. He was right here less than half an hour ago. Why? Because I wanted you to feel the pain I've been feeling since that jerk showed up. I don't know what the kids will make of all this. Oh my God, Dave, please don't involve the kids, please. I'm sorry, darling, it's too late. At that precise moment, Linda emerged into view through the doorway. Catching sight of the movement, Tracy let out a squeal before quickly burying her face beneath the sheets. Don't even try to hide, Mom. Denial doesn't work for ostriches, and it won't work for you either, came the stern remark. Tracy remained concealed under the sheets, emitting only muffled groans. Her bed companion appeared visibly uncomfortable. When Dad called me, I wanted to believe you hadn't done this to him. But now, seeing you like this, I understand why he reached out. If I hadn't witnessed it myself, I might have pleaded with him to forgive you. But now I know that's out of the question, the speaker continued. The room fell into silence, broken only by the sound of deep sobs. Well, if you've got nothing to say, Mom, I'll say it all. You won't be babysitting your granddaughter this weekend. And if keeping her away from your toxic influence means cutting you off completely, then consider yourself estranged from her for good. A pitiful no came from beneath the sheets. Linda began to cry as well. You should have seen Granddad's face earlier. You've completely shattered him. She attempted to flee, but I caught hold of her and embraced her. She struggled free and hurried downstairs. Shortly afterward, the sound of the front door slamming echoed through the house. It was a few minutes before Tracy returned, her eyes swollen with tears. Why did you do that, David? Because you haven't experienced even a fraction of the pain I have, Tracy. You haven't felt like your heart's been torn out and trampled on, but you will. I promise you that much. I'm tired of pretending. Just get out of my house, both of you. Tracy's defiance flashed in her eyes once more. If anyone's leaving this house, it'll be you. I utilized the power of attorney you granted me just in case something happened to you, to transfer the property deed solely into my name. The intensity of her own voice caught Tracy off guard, even surprising her. It was evident from my expression that her confession of yet another betrayal had only fueled my anger further. She realized she was morally digging herself into a deeper hole. However, I swiftly regained composure. It's peculiar how shocking news eventually numbs the pain once it reaches a certain threshold. I had reached that threshold 2 hours ago. How do you plan on managing the mortgage, Tracy? Do you think we haven't figured it out, David? Between my salary, commissions, and John's income, we'll manage it just fine. What salary, Tracy? Your boss, Mr. Johnson, wanted me to inform both of you that you're fired. He would have informed you himself, but it seems both your phones are switched off. Quite the moralist. He didn't take kindly to two married individuals like you cheating during work hours. You didn't tell him, Dave. Please tell me you didn't. Yep, sent him some delightful photographs as well. Tracy's companion in bed finale spoke up. How did you know I was married? Driver's license, remember. Phone book, a quick call, easy. Your wife's Jenny, around 5'6", with pretty red hair. Kids, Robert and Sarah, seem like good kids. Tell me, were you planning to betray them just like this woman was planning to betray me? Please, Mr. Brown, don't tell my wife. Why not? Haven't you emptied all your bank accounts already, getting ready to sail off into the sunset with my wife? She was going to take the house. Just let me break it to her gently, please. She doesn't deserve this. I still care for her in my own way. She shouldn't have to find out like this. What doesn't deserve to find out like I did, you mean? Yes, you're right. Unfortunately, it's too late. I didn't have to turn around to know exactly when Jenny and her children entered the room. The expression on his face told the whole story. It was priceless. It's far too late, my dear husband. I'll always be thankful to Mr. Brown here for bringing this to my attention. Just so you're aware, the evidence he's providing should be enough to activate the prenuptial agreement we signed the last time I forgave you. Tracy's gaze shifted to her partner in bed. In my detached state, I idly pondered the reason. Was it because he was a habitual cheater? Or was it the realization that their financial plans were now ruined? The locks on my house should have already been changed. If you want to come by tomorrow morning to gather your belongings, they'll be in the dumpster I plan on renting this afternoon. Throughout this outburst, John could only stare at his own feet, a look of horror on his face. Later, I discovered that he was the one who initially pursued Tracy, though the test drive had been her idea. His intention had been to confess to his wife and family the next day. He glanced sadly at his wife and briefly at his children, but couldn't hold their gaze. Jenny, though losing control, briefly gathered herself. Well, kids, if you ever wondered what a betrayer looks like, now you know. Tracy shrank under their combined gaze. Jenny grabbed the children and stormed out. I approached the bed and addressed the couple with contempt. Just leave my house. You have no idea of the anger I'm experiencing right now. I'll be back in about 2 hours, and I expect you both to be gone when I return. Tracy, don't even think about trying to cheat me. If you do, your chances of a happy ending, no, your chances of survival, will go from slim to noon. Got it? One glance at my expression conveyed the gravity of my intentions to them. I hurried after Jenny and intercepted them before they departed. We arranged to meet at a cafe, which we did. We comforted each other and guided the children through the forthcoming process. Robert displayed a maturity well beyond his years as he consoled his weeping sister. I deeply wished her father could witness his daughter's anguish. I handed Jenny my business card and extended any assistance I could offer. We parted on amicable terms, I believe. The following week proved to be exceedingly difficult. Yes, I am capable of compartmentalizing emotions in times of crisis. However, it merely postpones the pain rather than eliminating it. Despite being occupied with work and legal matters, the agony persisted. The lawyers showed keen interest in my evidence, especially the voice recorder I discovered beneath the bed. It captured conversations where the adulterous couple meticulously planned to seize the majority of the marital assets from both households. Tracy rationalized it as her entitlement due to my higher income. While divorce typically assumes an equal division of assets, my lawyer informed me that judges could deviate from this norm, particularly when presented with evidence of premeditated deceit. Linda insisted on listening to the recordings as well. We were both shocked by her mother's calculated malice. Linda even called her mother seeking an explanation, but received nothing to convince her otherwise. I maintained a composed demeanor for Linda's sake and projected strength for my son when he called. But inwardly, I was struggling. After the show the following weekend brought a pleasant surprise. Jenny called me. She expressed her delight in taking care of her own lawn but confessed to being clueless about operating the mower. After giving her some lessons on Sunday and tackling a few other minor maintenance tasks, I was graciously invited to stay for dinner. As we continued our conversation well into the night after putting the kids to bed, the tone shifted. "How are you holding up, Jenny?" I inquired. "As well as can be expected, Dave," she replied. "Thanks for asking. I feel like I've been mentally preparing for this for years. Deep down, I knew it was inevitable. My legal team uncovered his plans for our finances and thwarted them. I couldn't believe he was scheming to leave us nearly destitute. My lawyers assure me that I'll retain the house, receive child support and alimony, and claim 90% of the assets, all thanks to your evidence and the prenuptial agreement." "Glad I could assist, Jen," I said. "Mine mentioned a similar outcome, but with only a fraction of the assets. He showed up 2 days ago, begging for mercy," Jenny continued. "I suppose his lawyers briefed him on the grim reality, and the thought of financial ruin terrified him. I sent him packing. My only concern now is the impact on the children. Sarah is at an age where she can thrive without a father figure, but I worry about Rob." "I understand, Jen," I nodded. "At his age, a young boy truly benefits from a positive male influence. I've been giving that some thought. Can I step in? I'd be honored to be a part of Rob's life and offer whatever support I can." Jenny fell silent for a moment, visibly conflicted. "I realize your situation might be delicate right now, Dave," she began cautiously. "I'm not sure how to—" "Don't worry, Jen," I interrupted. "Supporting Rob is all I'm offering at this stage." I witnessed relief wash over her face as we delved into the details for a while. "How about you, Dave? Are you all right?" "I'm not sure, Jen. I'm still incredibly confused. I don't understand what I did to earn such intense hatred from her. Seeing her with your John, it just shattered me. It's made me question my own masculinity. Was I really that inadequate? I just can't figure it out. Ruining her relationships with her children, her father, probably our shared friends, and getting her fired, it just doesn't feel like enough somehow. I still feel incomplete. I completely understand your sentiments, Dave." Jenny gazed at me for a while, clearly contemplating her next words. Finally, she spoke. "You know what you need to do to regain your sense of self, right, Dave?" Jenny leaned in, her eyes firm. "Yes, I do, Jen." "Good. How far are you willing to let me go, Jen?" Her voice now held the same determination. "Indeed, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." "Go as far as you need to in order to rid yourself of those demons, Dave. You're too good of a person to let lingering pain dictate your life. Let it all out, Dave." "All right. I'll need an alibi." "You'll have one, trust me." After she shared her alibi plan with me, we shared a hearty laugh that I desperately needed. Resuming our conversation, it felt like we were only halfway through. "What about you, Jen? Do you feel the urge for revenge against Tracy?" "Goodness, no. I know how smooth-tongued he can be. Your poor wife never stood a chance. I almost pity her. We parted as friends, and she promised to discuss with Rob whether he'd be interested in helping me restore an old car I owned. He was keen, and that became our routine for the next 6 weeks. After school, he'd come over and we'd tinker around. I took every chance to discuss my values with him, and we became close friends. However, once I dropped him off at home, my focus shifted. I spent all my spare time spying on the happy couple. With our bank accounts frozen by the lawyers, John and Tracy couldn't find their own place. Tracy was staying with one of her remaining friends, and John was doing the same. They often spent evenings together before parting ways late at night. Eventually, I had established a consistent enough routine that I called Jenny one Thursday night and informed her that the following night would be the moment. She made arrangements for the children to stay with her parents for the night. I drove to her house and parked in her driveway. After exchanging a kiss on the lips and a remark, "Give him one from me," I rolled an old motorcycle belonging to John out of the back gate and started it a block away from her house. Upon arriving at his friend's residence, I surveyed the surroundings and quietly disabled the streetlight with my air pistol. Following that, I simply waited in the bushes at the side of his friend's driveway. He caught me off guard by deviating from his usual routine. Instead of arriving by car, he appeared in a taxi 40 minutes later. It became evident when I saw his unsteady gait as he descended the driveway that he had been drinking. Violence has never been my inclination. My sense of integrity demanded a fair confrontation. Well, relatively fair at least. As fair as having an affair with a man's wife when he wasn't even aware of your existence. I positioned myself in front of him. "Hello, John." He paused, his expression frozen for a moment. In the dim light, I could see understanding dawning in his eyes. His reaction was not what I expected. Well, they say courage can be deceiving, right? Well, look who it is, the guy who couldn't control his woman. This was a serious mistake on his part. Instantly, my intention to conduct a restrained confrontation disappeared. The offended side of me got the upper hand. A quick blow to the jaw sent him to the ground, his arms and knees supporting his weight. After that, my memories became somewhat vague, but it lasted a long time. Fortunately, the red haze cleared, allowing me to complete the final part of my plan. I picked him up and put him in the middle of the road. Perhaps the authorities would have mistaken him for another unfortunate victim of the attack, and perhaps not. I returned to the motorcycle and drove to a shopping center. In the dim light, I changed my clothes and discarded them, along with my gloves, in a dumpster. Then, I rode a block away from Jen's house and pushed the bike back. Jenny eagerly awaited my return and interrogated me about how things had gone. She didn't appear too upset that I had deviated from the plan in my anger. Upset people don't usually grin like Cheshire cats. Once she had all the gritty details, I excused myself to use her shower and eliminate any potential evidence. I checked my knuckles for bruises. Everything was fine. As I was rinsing my hair with my eyes closed, I felt a cool breeze followed by warm skin. A pair of arms wrapped around me from behind. "I thought you didn't want this." "Forget what I want, you need this. You've taken the man, now you need to take his woman." I turned quickly and our lips met in a kiss. Man, I really needed that. Eventually, we pulled away from each other. Plus, when the cops come to verify your story, I need to make sure we're totally believable. So wrap it up, you big oaf, and head to the bedroom. We made love, and I fell asleep. I woke up in the dim light before sunrise, feeling her return to bed and snuggle up to me. "I'm sorry, Jen. I was exhausted last night. I hope you're not too upset. If it was you in second gear, God help me if I ever experience your third. Let me show you." I had to demonstrate it to her. After that, we both dozed off again. I woke up to the smell of breakfast and the sound of coffee being brought to us. "Hey, Dave, some jerk smashed the back window of your car last night. I've already called the police." This was accompanied by a sly wink. Indeed, the police arrived and registered my license plate in their database. Shortly after, it was associated with a reported incident of potential assault from the previous night. It was fortunate that my alibi and I were together in a house with a strong scent of intimacy. Our nosy neighbor corroborated our account, confirming that my car had been parked there during the time of the assault, just as it had been on numerous occasions in recent weeks. Unbeknownst to her, I wasn't in the spare room as usual. I was never considered a significant suspect. I encountered Tracy once more, approximately a week after her partner's rough night. She called ahead to inform me of her intention to retrieve the remainder of her belongings. Upon learning that everything had already been donated to charity, she expressed a desire to speak nonetheless. As I noticed her car pulling up outside, I glanced through the window to see Tracy standing beside her vehicle, engrossed in a phone call. When she eventually knocked on the door, I greeted her while still in my dressing gown, prompting a disapproving look from her. However, I maintained a neutral expression as I welcomed her inside. After requesting her phone and handbag, I stowed them away in the spare room and shut the door. It was evident that she suspected my vigilance regarding any potential recording devices. Yet, considering her attire, it seemed unlikely she could conceal one on her person. We settled into chairs positioned on opposite sides of the kitchen table. "Dave, I want you to be aware that I've made arrangements with a friend. If I don't call within 60 minutes, she'll notify the police." I acknowledged her prudent measure with a nod, but chose to remain silent. I had something to tell her, and it could wait. "Dave, may I express how regretful I am about how our marriage ended?" "Save your words, Tracy. I have no interest in sitting here while you attempt to ease your guilt by rationalizing why you sought to harm me." The look on her face was priceless, as if she couldn't recognize me. "All right, Dave. It was you who attacked John, wasn't it?" "Yes." Her surprise was evident. She clearly anticipated me denying it. "What? What's difficult to understand, Tracy? You asked if I assaulted him, and I admitted to it. It was me. But why? He never did anything to you." "Come on, Tracy. Infidelity couldn't have clouded your judgment that quickly. Seeing you with him shattered me. It emasculated me, undermined my confidence as a man, made me doubt my ability to satisfy a woman, and stripped me of my pride." She was taken aback. It seemed she hadn't considered this aspect of her actions. "That's the consequence of infidelity, you know. Eventually I realized I had two options. I could end up like your father, a sad, solitary old man devoid of intimacy and purpose, or I could fight my way out of the corner you and your lover backed me into. Does it truly surprise you that I chose the path of resilience, the only option allowing me to preserve my sense of self? Yes, I dismantled your relationship, and if necessary for my dignity, I would do it again. You forced this confrontation, Tracy. There can only be one victor. To prevent you and him from ruining me, I must eliminate you both." These words were delivered with such calm, chilling certainty that they brooked no doubt. But I had hoped that by isolating me from friends, family, and costing me my job, you were finished with me. John and I simply fell in love, Dave. It was beyond our control. Surely you remember what it's like to be in love, don't you? Tracy, I recall the conversation from 8 weeks ago. As I mentioned then, perhaps falling in love wasn't within your control, but your actions afterward were. If you had approached me and said, "Dave, I've developed feelings for someone else, I want a divorce," I would have been saddened but would have respected your decision and granted you freedom, or fought to salvage our relationship depending on my choice at the time. However, by revealing your intentions in such a vicious and cruel manner, you initiated a conflict, betraying everything I believe in and everything I thought you believed in. And now, Dave, can you let John and me live in peace now that you've sought your revenge? Yes, I believe I can, if only because I can't think of anything else to destroy. Thank you, Dave. Don't get too relieved, Tracy. I'm not the one you should be concerned about. What do you mean? No, I've enacted my revenge on Johnny Boy. But his wife hasn't started with you yet. If I were you, I'd watch out for her. She's quite formidable, I assure you. In that moment, an ethereal female voice descended the stairs from the main bedroom. Are you heading back to bed, Dave? You made a promise to me, didn't you? Who is this? Jenny. She hurried away, despite my warning not to involve the police anymore. I ascended the stairs to find Jenny fully dressed. She held me until the trembling subsided. As for Tracy, she's vanished. I never attempted to locate or reach out to her again. Like I mentioned, I'm Dave, and I feel fantastic. I once read that seeking vengeance against those who wronged you can leave you feeling hollow. Bullshit. It's the most potent remedy for depression I've ever encountered. Damn it. It's time to let go of the past. It's too draining. A fresh start awaits me. Jen and I never became romantically involved. We did lean on each other to vent our frustrations regularly, but there wasn't the necessary chemistry to progress further. Nevertheless, we were close friends and always looked out for each other. With our combined support, Rob and Sarah turned out well. I kept my distance when she had potential boyfriends and refrained from any intimacy until their relationships ended. Some of them felt intimidated by me, knowing that if they mistreated her, they'd have to answer to me. Before proposing to her, one even sought my approval, which I gladly gave. Their wedding was emotional, and in the absence of her father, she asked me to walk her down the aisle. It was at the wedding that she introduced me to an old friend of hers who had flown in. With my own issues resolved, I was emotionally stable enough to pursue a normal relationship, and now I'm even considering asking Jen to give me away at my wedding. Why not? Without confronting the two cheaters, would I have been able to move on and live a normal life? Absolutely not.
Hi there, I'm Tracy, and my life has taken a nosedive over the past couple of years. While I could somewhat justify my actions from that time, explaining what I did last week is going to be a bit more challenging. I apologize. I'll clarify. Reflecting on it, my life with Dave used to be good, but it had become stagnant. The only excitement left was my first granddaughter. So when John started showing interest in me as a woman, I felt rejuvenated, almost like a teenager again. He was attentive and caring, and he swept me off my feet. Deep down, I knew our relationship was wrong, but it felt incredibly satisfying. Our bond progressed from conversations to dates, and eventually to physical intimacy. Guilt hardly ever crossed my mind. By the time we kissed, I was already certain of my love for him and his for me. We even made plans to leave our respective spouses and marry. My friend Carol had endured a messy divorce and shared how her ex seized control of their assets, making it challenging for her to even seek legal help. That's why John and I discreetly took control of everything. While I wasn't sure how his wife would react, I knew Dave wouldn't be pleased. We had discussed what constituted cheating, and I realized I was already far beyond that line before John and I made our intentions public. I was fully prepared to provide Dave with whatever the courts deemed fair in the divorce settlement. My main goal was to be in control and safeguard myself against any potential backlash. It was Carol who raised the question of whether I had already slept with John. I didn't really enjoy making love, but a woman needs to feel wanted. I believed that my husband still found me attractive. He often sought affection from me. If only I still felt the same way about Dave as I did about John, maybe this whole situation could have been avoided. Carol has planted doubts in me. What if John had a small instrument or couldn't hold out for long? When I really wanted intimacy, I wanted it to be enjoyable, didn't I? At this stage of my life, intimacy was more about emotion than physical action. I didn't expect John to be as experienced as Dave. Dave was caring, gentle, and enjoyable. This kind of thinking led to the fact that I eventually betrayed my marriage. My first meeting with John had two goals: to test him and strengthen our bond for the challenges ahead. To be honest with myself, I wanted to make sure John was committed to our plans. Deep down, I felt that he was rather weak-willed. I understand your thoughts. Have I ever considered the possibility of being caught and facing Dave's wrath? Have I thought about how this will affect my father and children? The simple answer is no. I never expected to be caught, and even if I was, I never expected Dave's extreme reaction. As for the other issues, I just didn't consider them, okay? I've never compared myself to my mother. She left us when I was little, so she wasn't a factor for me. Despite all the consequences, I want to make it clear that the intimacy with John was not as amazing as one might think. His instrument was fine, but it fell far short of Dave's level. Although he lasted a reasonable amount of time, I felt uncomfortable. In the end, I pretended to like it, just like I used to do with Dave. Men and their egos, honestly. I still can't comprehend how Dave discovered my solitary act of unfaithfulness. But that's inconsequential to me now. Witnessing the pain in his eyes when he entered the room shattered me. Initially, I attempted to rationalize my actions, but it was futile. Dave had never warranted such betrayal. My guilt initially morphed into defiance, albeit briefly, before dissipating. The realization that my father had observed my transgression, coupled with my daughter's words, devastated me. The sorrow mirrored in John's daughter's eyes was equally agonizing. I never fathomed my husband capable of such cruelty. Upon receiving the hospital's call regarding John's admission, I instinctively knew Dave was involved. Despite the doctors attributing John's injuries to a hit-and-run accident, I harbored different beliefs. This led me to contact the police, providing Dave's name and vehicle license plate number. However, when I followed up 2 days later, Dave was no longer considered a person of interest. That's why I remained by John's side throughout his week-long hospitalization. I understood he needed my protection. Up until 8 weeks ago, if you had asked me whether my Dave was capable of such a thing, I would have firmly denied it. But for 15 minutes, in my old bedroom, I caught a glimpse of a new, monstrous side of Dave. A monster that I realized I had helped create. A monster capable of boundless cruelty. I was certain it was Dave. That's why, just before John was discharged, I called Dave and arranged to meet at our former house. This had to end. Hadn't he exacted enough revenge already? Both John and I were shattered. Wasn't that sufficient? Approaching my front door filled me with sadness, though not as much as the impending conversation. How had love turned into enmity so swiftly? Before ringing the bell, I called Carol and instructed her to contact the police if she didn't hear from me within an hour. Dave greeted me at the door, clad in his robe, which struck me as unusual. His face was devoid of expression as he welcomed me inside. When he requested my phone and handbag, I cursed myself for not thinking to bring a recorder. But then I questioned the point. He'd never confessed to the assault. I glanced briefly at the stranger, who had been a part of my life for 27 years. Regret washed over me for how our marriage had ended. I hoped that by explaining my side of the story, I could alleviate some of his pain and perhaps soften his stance. However, he shut me down immediately, showing no interest in my explanations. His tone was harsh, his expression blank. Who was this man? His face and voice were unfamiliar to me. I was taken aback when he casually confessed to assaulting John. Upon hearing his reasoning, I understood precisely his motive. Let's just say, it didn't alleviate my guilt in any way. I genuinely couldn't comprehend why Dave harbored such animosity towards John. He quickly enlightened me on that matter. Suddenly, I realized how self-absorbed I had become, which had clouded my judgment and led me to justify the entirely unacceptable. I suddenly grasped not only the reason for our punishment, but also, judging by Dave's expression, that it wasn't over. Including my inquiry about whether he remembered the feeling of love was part of my rehearsed speech. His response felt like a sharp stab in my stomach. How else could a fundamentally decent person feel? I knew I had to flee. My question regarding potential future reprisals was merely to gauge the extent of his intentions. I never imagined that John's wife posed a physical threat until Dave's remarks. Suddenly, I empathized with her situation, considering what I would do if roles were reversed. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized she was upstairs. I hurriedly fetched John from the hospital, and together we fled. Both divorces were finalized, and the paperwork arrived at our P.O. box, miles away from my new residence. The stress of living incognito, devoid of friends, and in constant fear was overwhelming. Eventually, we had some money, but the waiting period was grueling. We struggled to find employment, only landing commission-based real estate jobs with significant gaps in income. John and I tied the knot 6 months later, but in hindsight, it was a hasty decision born out of desperation. We were like two stranded souls thrown together, and marrying seemed like a way to justify the pain we had inflicted, especially upon ourselves. My recent fall started innocently enough. John's only remaining testicle never functioned properly, making him incapable of lovemaking. We couldn't afford the necessary testosterone treatment to solve the problem, which made him moody, insecure, and jealous. Let's be honest, a marriage built on infidelity faces an uphill struggle from the very beginning. His irritable mood also made me unfriendly. A friend suggested hormone replacement therapy because it solved a similar problem for her. I hesitated because of the expected cost, but she explained that since every second woman over the age of 45 was taking it, it was much more affordable than testosterone therapy. After the visit to the doctor, life miraculously returned to a happy course. However, my doctor warned me that the drug has one side effect. He mentioned it with a smirk, as if it was a positive thing. But when this happens to the wife of a man who is unable to satisfy her, it is incredibly destructive. Suddenly, I felt more excited than I had been in the 5th year of my marriage to Dave. We didn't have any closeness with John. I quickly learned to hide my tools for John's pleasure because he didn't like them and he was jealous of me. When a colleague at my new job started showing interest in me, I found myself unable to resist. Despite the significant age difference, I was flattered by his attention. Keeping our meetings secret was incredibly stressful, especially because of John's intense jealousy, which made it much more difficult than dealing with Dave's suspicions. Our first kiss seemed strangely familiar to me, like a strong sense of déjà vu, but it was more disturbing than exciting. I decided not to repeat the mistake of cheating anymore. After much thought, I decided on a far from ideal solution, believing that John should respect my needs. So, last Thursday evening, I sat John down and gently explained that I would not be home on Friday evening. I needed to look for intimacy elsewhere. I assured him that it would be unnoticeable, purely physical, and that I would spare him any details. His silence that Thursday evening and Friday morning seemed to me a reluctant agreement. After a brief meeting with my new lover, who soon fell asleep, I felt ashamed and returned home to our trailer, only to discover that John was missing. At dawn, the sound of sirens revealed the grim truth. John was no longer there. Once again, I've ruined a man. While preparing for his expected revenge, I was surprised to find only a suicide note and a letter to his lawyer. A suicide note was emailed to our friends, which caused them to quickly break off their relationship with me. Meanwhile, in a letter to his lawyer, the beneficiaries of his life insurance and will were changed from me to his children. I realized too late the consequences of hurting a man's pride. When will I ever learn?